My name is Wesley Kirk. My business is called Vision and Verve. I'm a photographer and filmmaker in no particular order. And I do a lot of commercial and creative photography. I'm pretty involved in the Fort Worth art scene. I'm from Fort Worth and based in Fort Worth. I lived in Denton for quite a few years. That's how I know Will. And yeah, I got started when I was 13. I got started with filmmaking first. I had an idea for a movie, and I got a camera. I got some friends together, and we just went out and made it. And it wasn't long after that my mom accidentally bought two of the same camera on eBay and gave me the extra one. And then my dad, he had just quit his job as an insurance adjuster. And back then they were having to photograph everything with film. And so he gave me 99 rolls of film to play around with. And my parents were nice enough to develop all the stupid pictures that I took. And so that's how I got started with photography, because it was a good way to keep my skills sharp with filmmaking between films, because it's a lot harder to get a bunch of people together to make a movie than it is to get like one or two people together for photography. And I've just been very lucky. I've never had to have a real job. So I've always been able to make a living off of using cameras. When I was about 17, people just kept coming up to me wanting to hire me to, take their senior portraits and stuff like that. And so I was like, I guess I do this now. I guess I have a business. And that business ended up being called The Vision Beautiful. And I was just operating like that for a very long time. Like whatever people wanted, I'd be like, I can do that. And so because of that, it became pretty confusing for people to understand what it is that I do. And so 2 years ago now, I rebranded my business to be called Vision and Verve. And I started with a totally new portfolio, like completely from scratch, focusing in on the type of work that I like to do. Like I really like doing stuff with handmade sets and props and have a very heavy emphasis on the art direction, make things like very vibrant and colorful, and a lot of conceptual shoots. And that's summary of who I am and how I got to where I am.
That's good. Now, and you went to UNT, and what did you major in?
I went to UNT and I majored in film, and it was a total mistake.
Why was that?
The problem with film schools is that they are very good at teaching theory and history and not at all about production. And I didn't find that out until it was kind of like too late. I was already a junior before I finally got into some of the film classes and realized I knew more than the teachers. And so it was very depressing. So I ended up founding Short Film Club so that I could teach what the school wasn't teaching. So we focused a lot on production, and within a year we became the largest, most active club on campus, where we would make like 3 official short films every year with the members of the club. We'd have 3 meetings a week so that we could watch and basically a lot of the same stuff y'all are doing in Will's class for photos we would do in Short Film Club. So that's why if you are wanting to pursue a career in using cameras, this is just my personal opinion, but I don't feel it is particularly necessary to go to college, because the best thing you'll get out of it is the connections that you make and the opportunities that you'll have available. Like classes are the least of your concern. Like if you can manage to join clubs outside of classes, that's where you're going to get the most benefit.
So if kids like are planning on going to college, which most of our students are, you would say, don't necessarily major in RTVF or film or photo. What would you encourage them to major in instead?
Yes. So when I started getting into the film classes, and realized how awful they were, they also like had the strategy to make the film classes as hard as possible to get into. Um, their thought process was that they would be left with only the people that wanted to be there the most, but they had the opposite effect. Like everyone who knew what they were doing realized they didn't need the degree, so they left. So, but I was committed, and so I picked up a minor in entrepreneurship, and just those classes alone, I learned more than I did in any other class I was ever in. Like entrepreneurship classes will definitely prepare you the most for pursuing a career as a creative, because it's not the same stuff that you learn in normal business classes, which is just like, you know, a lot of the boring logistics. Entrepreneurship teaches you like the creative side of business, like how to structure your business, like how to price your work and all that sort of stuff. So if you really want to get a degree, don't focus so much on taking like art type classes, because those I've never heard anyone talk about an art class where they really learned a lot. But anyone who's taken a business class, like it seems like that's the best place to focus on, especially because that will work for you no matter what you want to do.
That's awesome. And UNT now has that, they have a design management major too, which I think is actually pretty cool. I'm going to share my screen real quick and pull up your website and probably ask some questions about what's on your website to everybody. Is my screen currently being shared, or at least?
Yes, I can see it.
So Wesley, do you have anything that you're particularly proud of that you'd like for me to pull up?
I mean, part of my quarantine plan is to update the website, so there's not a lot of really new stuff on there at the moment.
Well, yeah, tell us what makes you like money. What makes you like get by day to day? What are those jobs?
So my I make more money doing film than photo, because there's just so much more that goes into it. And my sort of specialty with film and is, well, part of the specialty is that I'm one of the few people who does film and photo equally good in equal measure. So that's one way that I stand out. Thank you. But so that's one way. But also the two things that I get clients most for is that I'm good at making impossible projects happen. So when the budget's tight and they need someone who can really get a lot done, that's when I have people come to me for. But then also I have a lot of clients with really boring business models, and they don't know how to sound like they're human. And so that's why I have a lot of people come to me, is I like to make boring stuff interesting, or at least, you know, worth checking out. So my biggest client for past few years has been United Capital Financial Advisors.
Uh-huh.
That
sounds like a really exciting client.
The good part, though,
is that they have money.
Yeah, it does sound like they have money.
Yeah, they do have money. When they first reached out to me, the first thing they said was, just want you to know, we hate corporate videos, we hate corporate work, so we want something that's different. So that's what I have people come to me for a lot, is they want something to stand out and just look cool.
And you feel like your stuff does that?
Hopefully.
Are you pacing around your house while you're talking to us right now?
I am. Do I sound like I'm pacing?
Cool. Is there a particular, like, now, and I know one thing that you normally talk to kids about when you're visiting class is how you like to balance your own kind of creative stuff with your paid work.
Yes.
You want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, that is a super important part to me about my business model, is that I basically just make money to fund the silly ideas that I have. And I'm pretty upfront about that with a lot of my clients too. Like, even with United Capital, I'll joke with them like, oh yeah, I charge y'all more because this is boring so that I can pay for the fun stuff. Like the biggest project that I've done, it's called The World We Knew Is Gone, where I traveled around the country for a year and a half, taking self-portraits in a spacesuit in different desert landscapes. And they really dug that. And so like every time I would go shoot something with them, they'd have like a list for me of like different deserts to check out.
So that's a good point. You brought that up, and you had a show featuring that work here a few months ago, back when the world was. I went to the show and it was great. But I know, like, if you see any of the ones where Wesley's in a spacesuit, which Wesley, remind me real quick again, how much did you spend on that spacesuit?
More than 3,000, less than 4. I can't remember exactly how much.
Yeah,
and that's just my first spacesuit. I've already invested in the second one.
You have 2 spacesuits.
2 spacesuits. Well, I guess 3 if you count some of the more ghetto ones.
You have 3 spacesuits. Okay. But so I know my students just recently finished doing kind of an interesting series where they kind of chose a concept and then created a bunch of images revolving around that concept. That's what yours, what like we see right here was, right? What was the concept behind the series again?
So, the complicated. I was engaged and that didn't work out. And my ex-fiance was my business partner. We lived together. We had this whole future planned out. And after she left, I just didn't have a vision for my future anymore. Like I felt like everything I knew had disappeared. And so I had already always wanted to own a spacesuit. So I bought it. And the day that she moved to Denver was the day that I left to start this trip. And so I was just traveling alone through these completely desolate, empty landscapes. And the photo project and also short film, it tells the story of a lone astronaut looking for a new place to call home.
And you don't have this up on your website aside from those pictures on your thing, right? You don't have like a blog dedicated to it that I can pull up to have as the background?
Not at the moment, because so after the opening reception for that, I wanted to re-edit the film, and we were planning on like having another screening of the final cut of the film, and then we were going to put everything online, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. So I might just end up putting the whole photo project online soon, and then sharing the short film later.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, okay. So a couple questions. If we've got students right now that want to get into commercial photo / video or creative management, something where they're creative as their job, right? Their career. Yeah. What advice, if you were 18 years old, what would you yourself be doing right now to make that happen?
Sorry, you said for commercial photography or just
basically just to be a creative as a career? Okay.
Man, there's so many directions I could go with that. Some advice that I wish I had at the time was I did everything. Anyone wanted photos or something, I would do it. And the problem that I had with that was that it made it harder for people to recommend me because they didn't know how to talk about me. And so I would say that as much as you're able, it's very helpful for your work to be cohesive, so that it's easy for people to talk about you, for your type of work to be the first to come to mind for the work that you want to be pursued for. So like, it's pretty easy to get into wedding photography. So I would recommend like branding yourself as a wedding photographer, have a whole portfolio of just weddings. Whereas if you wanted to get into commercial photography, don't ever show wedding photography. Like if you want to pick kind of one or the other, because for one, like for commercial photography, if they see you do wedding photography or like senior portraits, they think you're that kind of photographer, and they don't think you take yourself seriously enough to be, you know, sort of like an elevated brand. So that would be one thing. But I know that's really hard when you're starting out, especially because you also want to try everything. So I would say do that. Try everything for a bit, but then really pay attention to what you enjoy and also like what you feel confident you can make money you deserve doing. That's and good. Then hone in on that. And then the other thing, the best advice I heard when I was starting out was about charging appropriately.
Which I'm gonna interrupt because it's Anaya asked that same question. She said, "What is your rate for your clients, and how much do you charge?" So when you're going to talk about charging appropriately, but kind of move on into
I'll
to the degree that you're comfortable talking about it.
So when I started out, I was broke, and I assumed everyone else was too. And so I would charge very low session fees, like literally like $20 session fees. Mm-hmm. And I had a friend tell me that the amount that you charge says something about the value of your work. And so if you charge more, people feel like it's worth more, even though it's the exact same thing. And so I went from $20 to $75, and the number of shoots I had people approach me for like quadrupled overnight. The
$75 is still super cheap.
It is. It's way too cheap. But that's when I had like a very weird business model. So here's a better way I've had that explained to me. There was a guy that had these little plexiglass cubes, and he would put New York City trash in them. And when he would sell them for $5, everyone's like, "Oh, it's a gag gift." When he would sell them for $20, everyone would be like, "Oh, it's a souvenir. It's real New York City trash." And then when he would sell them for $100, people were like, "Oh, it's art. It's so fancy." And so that's a good thing to keep in mind, is the price that you charge says something to the quality of your work. It doesn't actually affect the quality, but it like communicates something. And so that's why it's important to, for many reasons, to not sell yourself short, is that people put a value on what they spend money on, whether it's different. Whether the quality is different or not, they value it more. And so that's really important. That's why it's important to work for full price or free, but never cheap. Because if you're working for full price, cool. Both parties know exactly what the expectations are. If you're working for free, again, like the person who's getting something for free, they feel thankful for it, and they know not to ask too much. If someone is getting something for cheap, they feel just as entitled as someone who's paying full price, even though you're not getting the money that you need out of it. And so like those kinds of clients are always the worst ones. Yeah. Like what I'll do, I'll have my prices set to the full price, and then I'll offer discounts, but then it's clear to both parties, like, you are getting this much discount because I'm offering it. It's not because you're like, can I pay pennies on the dollar? Any penny pincher, I'm very wary of, because they're always the worst clients.
And like, so you talked about what you used to charge, right?
Yes.
Give us an idea of what you would charge now, like what Capital Bank, your client that you were talking about earlier, if you're doing a gig for them, what are you charging them?
When I started, I was on the old business model that everyone used to be on, where you'd have a low session fee, and then you would charge for prints. Mm-hmm. And that would be where you would make more money. But I just, for one, the world doesn't work that way anymore. Like, people don't actually need the physical print. They really need the digital more. But also, I just didn't like having to like hound clients or like walk them through the process. It just took so much more time. And it was like me fighting for every dollar. Whereas now, my business model is, it is my time, and that's it. I charge a session fee, sometimes an editing fee if I can get away with it. And then once the photos are edited, boom, they're yours. You can do whatever you want with them. I don't care. I don't have to do any follow-ups. Like, I can move on and go on to the next client. I don't have to like.
Oh, did we lose